Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Monday afternoon, I'm joined by Kevin Graham and Chris McElwain, and I'm going to declare it a happy Monday. I don't know how everybody else is feeling, but the mug comes out on a Monday afternoon, and if Kev joins me, I ask him where his brandometer is. Where is it sitting this morning, Kev Graham?
It's sitting... I don't know. I don't think my brandometer will ever be across 60%. I don't think it will be, and I think that's just the way it is. I've made my peace with that. I've made my peace also that he's the best manager that we can get. I've made my peace also that I'm not going to be fully on board in the way that we play football, but I've also made great peace that we win titles. And we've got a semi-final next week, which can lead to the best day of the season for me, the last day of the season, which is the Scottish Cup final. I love the Scottish Cup final. So I'll focus this week on that semi-final and gain St Johnstone beating St Johnstone and getting to another cup final. It's on the 24th for me. It's not the 25th, eh? It's the 24th, so it's always good to be close to that day as well. So I understand all these stuff. So my brandometer is always going to be like just sort of veering up and down the way. But I've made my peace with that, and I'm sure Brendan will make my peace with me.
Well, I find that an interesting point. I really do. I find that a really interesting point, Chris, because Kevin won't be the only Celtic supporter who has that feeling towards the gaffer. I'm on the other end of the scale, having gone through it with Kevin. I love a Scottish Cup final, especially when Kevin and I go with Marvin Compere, as we have done previously. I don't know if Marvin's got an invite to this one, Kev. You'll need to keep me updated on that, Ian. But Brendan Rodgers, for me, is, I agree with Kev, the best manager we could possibly have at the football club. I don't think anyone could have come in and done as good a job as he has done. You look at his 2 tenures, he has lost one domestic trophy, just one, and it was a League Cup last season. And we spoke about the horrendous refereeing in that game. I'm just saying, guys, there was horrendous refereeing in that game by the now departed Alan Muir. And if he wins the league, which is looking extremely likely, if anybody doesn't think that's going to happen, they don't understand football, unfortunately. And if we win the Scottish Cup, which obviously there's a couple of hurdles before we do that, he will have won 12 out of 13 domestic trophies that we have participated in, Chris. It is incredible form. It's unbelievable. I was sent a lot of people will have been sent a list this morning of whether if Celtic do the treble, this is the kind of records we're breaking, and James A. Forrest will become the most decorated footballer in the history of the club. It's unbelievable times that we're in, Chris. But it's interesting. It's not a dig at Kev. This is why I ask. I am interested in the impact his first departure left and the remnants that still remain, Chris, in amongst the Celtic fan base who are just saying, well, it'll never be full forgiveness. It is for me. It was the day he walked in, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I would probably say I was very much in the same camp. I mean, like many people, I was really disappointed when he left the first time, particularly the circumstances. I mean, the manager leaving, look, it happens. We've seen lots of managers that we've had affection for, lots of players that we've had affection for, moving on to other clubs. It absolutely happens, and it'll continue to happen. The manner in which Brendan left the first time, as a Celtic fan, it really stings. You can't help but have a degree of emotion about it, because we were on the cusp of doing something absolutely historic. And listen, Brendan's been a huge part of getting us in a position to do something historic, and we were right on the cusp of doing it. And then there was all the circumstances that contrived to make it not happen. You know, the manager leaving, the circumstances that Neil Lennon had to come in and work under the COVID season, along with all the players that came in, you know, and various other factors. And, you know, there was such a reaction to that. You know, everybody was just like, God, will we ever see that situation or that opportunity again? And I don't think it's, yeah, you know, it's easy for me to understand why a lot of that was directed at Brendan Rodgers. And like you, I've spoken to lots of Celtic fans out and about who absolutely doesn't, almost get the impression it doesn't matter what Brendan will do, they'll never ever forgive him for that. I'm not going to sit here and say people should forgive the manager and say, you know, he should win you round. But I always look back and I look through the 90s. I look at different periods that were challenging for the club, that were challenging for the supporter. Really highlighted the other week when I was at Jim's Play, and brings all those memories coming back. I mean, you're looking at that as an adult, actually. I mean, I was only 13, 14 when that was happening. But when I look back on that as an adult, you realise, and as Jim himself has said, it's really important to appreciate what you've got now. And at the moment, Brendan's came back. He's, is he trying to atone for him leaving? Is he trying to atone, or is he just trying to bring more success to the football club, to coin that famous Martin O'Neill phrase? I would prefer to just be in a position to say, look, what happened. Now I'm just going to appreciate the fact we've got a manager who's continuing to bring us success. And I know he'll never be everybody's cup of tea. He'll never be the flavour of the month with a lot of fans, and that's absolutely fine. But what we cannot deny are those statistics you just brought up. That volume of trophies and that consistent level of success that he's brought. The individual performances and context of the matches, we can have the wee criticism here and the dig there and do the armchair manager thing. But just for me, who else could bring that level of success to the club that he's done? I think he's got to be recognised for that.
Yeah, and he will be. And I think it's a minority, but every single Celtic supporter is due their own opinion on it. Let us know in the comment section. The reason I bring it up, obviously, he was bold with his changes at the weekend. He was asked after the game whether or not he is going to still be here next season. Again, it's never even entered my mind personally, maybe naively, the way that modern football works. I've never had any doubts he would be here until the end of the 3-year contract. Beyond that is a different discussion. And he said, Kevin, he used that famous thing in football where you go above and beyond the maximum percentage. And he said 150%. He went to 150, 150%. He will be here next season, Kev. And I'm not surprised at that. Are you?
No, because he did actually say in his press conference that he was here for his 3 seasons. Then, unless he was emptied, to use his exact words. So I'm not surprised that he's here. I think a lot of folk took the clip out of context that went out there, and when you actually watch the whole I was going to call it a presser there. That's a shooting offence. When you actually watch the whole press conference, and you see the context of the way that he answered the question, he is actually true. What he says there is the same. And you look at any sort of successful football clubs over the last 20 or 30 years, there's always been changes. They always need to keep evolving, whether it's the voice of the manager or the voice of the backroom staff. Alex Ferguson, for example, kept on changing his backroom staff because the players were getting used to used to hearing the same voice, or you need to keep on changing the players because eventually the players will stop listening. And that is true. Guardiola's finding that at Man City, that as well. There's only so much intensity you can actually take with the same voice telling you the same things, the same things day in, day out. Also as well, Scottish football's quite boring. So there will be players there who, even though it's absolutely magnificent playing for Celtic, it's no magnificent going to Ross County twice a year. It's no magnificent going to Motherwell twice a year. So they will actually be looking like that, and that's what he was bringing up. That's what he was saying, and it can be the same for a manager. Eventually, they go, well, I've done everything that I can do here. There is a ceiling that I can actually reach. So it'll be interesting to see the conversation that he has with Dermot Desmond in the summer. And it will be interesting to see where we go in the summer, because I've all heard the rumours that there is an extension on the table for him, and it's up to him if he wants to sign it or not. To go back to your Marvin Compere point, if he can get the Hampden app to work, he might be at the Scottish Cup semi-final because nobody can get the Hampden app to work. Sunday's going to be a disaster. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. With all digital tickets, so But that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show, and I'm pretty sure the aftermath of that will be mentioned as well. At some point, I would love to have players like Marvin Compere on This Is Acsom. It came up a couple of weeks ago. I was speaking to Frank McAvenny and Simon Houston on the Friday night show, and Simon spoke about Wayne Biggins, and I didn't think it was such a ridiculous suggestion because I'm really interested in obscure Celtic stories as much as I am in the legendary stories. You know, I would interview Wayne Biggins. I would interview Carol Muggleton.
Right.
You know, I'd love to go
Right.
down, you know, Marvin Compere. And I would like to find out where it all went wrong. I'd like to speak to Reggie Blinker, you know, because he's become something of a joke figure. And I'd like to speak to all these different people and ask them about the pressures of playing for Celtic, the good times, how they feel about the club. Remember Doumbé, Perrier Doumbé?
John Joel Perrier Doumbé, wasn't it?
Yes, the first ever Celtic player to have 2 hyphens. Unbelievable stat. I'd love to have him on This Is Acsom and speak about where it all went wrong. Brotto, the goalie, all these guys. There's lots of players I want to talk about in relation to the performance. I did watch it again this morning, and it was
Ramon Vega. He admits that he should have took that contract in Martin O'Neill's team.
Yeah,
he admits that. He's came out and says that that's one of the worst decisions that he's ever made. Jimmy Bullard as well, but maybe we lost one. Maybe that's not such a great loss for us.
Bullard's name came up on Friday night, Kev. I was in your kind of neck of the woods, as it were. I was in Camelin. And we were there at the Camelin Labour Club. Big shout out to everybody there, by the way. Made us really, really welcome. And obviously it was the first of the CSC World Tour. We started it off in Camelin, guys, and who knows where it's going to take us, right? We went in and it was Charlie Mulgrew who was the star of the show. His hair is looking unbelievable. I mean, what an installation that is. And we had a right good chat backstage and on obviously on the stage. And a great crowd, an absolutely fantastic crowd. I love going to all these, like, you know, the old miners' welfare style places where they've basically just built it from nothing and they run it themselves and there's a wee committee. I love all that. So big shout out to Joe Burt and his team. Fantastic. But Charlie brought up Jimmy Bullard, and it was around about that time, I think, Neil Lennon was trying to do something pretty big with the signings, wasn't he? Because at that time, can you remember David James was up for signing talks?
Campbell.
Campbell.
There's no mentioned as well around about that time.
He was up at the park. There's a picture of him up at the park.
Remember the one that always got me excited was Del Piero. There was talk of before he went to Australia.
I'd have taken him in a heartbeat. And you hope, and I know that there's levels here, but you just hope that a player like that wouldn't have given you Freddie Lundberg vibes. There's another one for the list of obscurities that we're going to maybe interview at some point in the future. But yes, Jimmy Bullard's name was brought up, Kev. And Chris, I really do want you to bring up some of your AI images that you've been working on over the weekend. I've just seen another one on Instagram that I'm giggling at because somebody mentioned the word camp earlier on. So we might get it up on the screen at some point. Obviously, the Brendan camp. Loads of great performances I felt at the weekend. And I want to start with one who has divided opinion, I feel. And has been the subject of conversation, particularly between myself and JP Mason, and that's Rio Hatate. He opens the goal account at the weekend. He scores in the first 10 minutes. It is an astonishing strike. Watched it back, absolutely brilliant strike, and it kind of like opens the floodgates for me. I mean, that game, and again watching it this for a second time, could have been anything. It's one of the matches. It could have been anything. It could have been 8 or 9-0, right? And Rio scores this goal, which is phenomenal. What a strike. Greg Taylor gets the assist, and I've got to throw this in as well, and we'll come back to the other two guys I'm going to mention here. Scales's ball carrying was tremendous in the build-up to the goal. Yeah. Taylor obviously plays that 1-2 with Rio, and the finish is superb. Top draw, absolute top draw. And a reminder, Chris, of that side of Rio that we absolutely love. The wee insight into what he could be. And we, JP and I, speak about a player taking it up a level, which inevitably means that they take it up another level somewhere else. And we've seen it with Frimpong, we've seen it with Van Dijk, and most recently with Matt O'Reilly. And we had that conversation about Rio saying, you know what, you can see that he's got it in his locker to take it up a level, and we've not seen it consistently enough. And we were frustrated after his shooting performances over the last few weeks. And we're saying, you know, if he could do that, if he could just add that to his game, that makes him a next level player. And he done it again, Chris. He was unbelievable. What a strike.
I thought he was unplayable in the first half in particular. The first goal is kind of what you almost expect Rio to do, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times out of 10, because he's always up for and willing to take that kind of shot on, that chance on. And sometimes, you get ones that haven't landed yet, but you get, occasionally he just catches it. And that was evidence that he's got that quality in his locker, as you say, to do that. I thought his second goal was even better, because I think it showed more maturity and evolution as a player. The one where he kind of dribbles and he takes his time, and you're thinking, God, is he going to shoot? Is he going to shoot? And he beats 2 or 3 players and then puts it in the net. And I thought that for me summed up his performance. He was absolutely unplayable at times. They couldn't get near him. He was great on the ball. His movement off the ball was good. His distribution was, probably a higher success ratio than what you sometimes see. The issue is, and why we get so frustrated with Hatate, is just being able to do that on a consistent basis. Now, is that down to the player, or is it down to the fact that the changes that the manager made kind of took the shackles off Rio a little bit and just gave him that freedom of movement? I think we pointed at the time when we were covering the match, we were almost playing with 2 number 10s with Rio and Engels kind of going forward. They just seem to have so much freedom. Now, some of that you maybe put down to the fact that the commander weren't really offering a huge amount, but I think you got to give credit to just the way the guys played. We were on the front foot, and you're right, and it was coming right through the back. For players like Scales who were carrying the ball forwards, he had a shot before Carter Vickers said, "Hold my beer," and then launches one into the rocket. I think the net was there, that thing still been moving. And Taylor, another player who came in, and Taylor just, for me, one of his best performances that I've seen, since long before he dropped out of the team. So, really good collective performance, particularly in that first half. But Rio Hatate, that if we could get that, for 90% of the season, I think he'd be player of the year. I really would. But it's just doing it on a consistent basis that's the challenge.
It's that 2-tier kind of going up levels thing, Kev, where if you take it up the extra level, then you will have interest from elsewhere, from richer clubs in richer leagues. And that's what's been happening over the last few years. And I don't want that to happen. I always say, I hate seeing quality leaving Celtic. But just for that season, or that 18 months when a player hits that kind of peak form, going up that level, and we have seen it with the aforementioned players that have already been quoted, Rio does have it in his locker, Kevin. He gave us a wee insight into that at the weekend. How impressed were you with Rio Hatate?
I had to laugh there, and Chris sort of clarified what he meant. He says, we expect that for Rio Hatate when he lined up to shoot. I was like, when he lined up to shoot, I went, oh no. But then as soon as it left his foot, I went, that's in. I went, that's a fantastic goalie. And I think that sums up the frustrating with him. And I think you saw the two sides of him at the weekend. First half unplayable, the second half he was a baked at it. He must have got replaced at half time with a completely different player because he was rotten in the second half. And aye. Maybe because he was so good in the first half. Mind you, the whole team completely slowed down, and it's very, very difficult. I think what you can have a look at for the weekend, and we spoke about this last week, it was well seen that the midfield was not blamed whatsoever for St Johnstone last week.
Interesting, yeah.
There was not any blame laid on that midfield whatsoever. So there was a lot of blame laid on the left-hand side. Then Jota got brung into it as well, saying you didn't do enough on the other side as well. So I found that really interesting when the game came out right away, because we were all speaking about, we'll replace Engels, we'll replace Hatate, what one would you replace in the midfield? Then Brendan went, no, I was happy with the midfield, the problem was elsewhere. So there you go, and that says an awful lot, But I think with where we've got with Rio, he was absolutely fantastic on Saturday. And I think on Friday, I think Rodgers was talking about Hatate when he was saying guys that have been here for a certain period now need moved on for the sake of it. I don't think now we're going to see there's not going to be a Matt O'Reilly trajectory keeping Rio for another year. I think he's been here for 3 seasons. He's at his peak that he's going to get with us, and I think we're not going to be too difficult to deal with in the summer with him, because I do believe that he's done these 3 years and that's it. There's certain guys where you go, right, this is a peak time to actually sell them. Matt O'Reilly was last year, and there's players now. Obviously, we've got the money for Matt O'Reilly, but we've got other guys there, and I think Rio's one of them. where Rodgers will go, right, I need to actually bring in competition in this area. And I think Rio's one of them that will be go. He's been here for 3 years. Can we get another level out of him? Don't know. Does he want to go to the next level? Maybe. He could be one that's sitting, look, God, I've been here for 3 seasons. I've won everything. I can do everything that I've done here. It's maybe just time to move on. And for both parties, they'll have the wee shake of hands and go, right, that's it. We move on. That's what happens in football. A natural
cycle.
A natural cut-off point. It's a natural cycle, aye.
The frustration for me would be he gives you that insight into what he can do. He gives you a wee sneaky peek behind the curtain, Chris, at what you could have. And if we were to tap into that, if Brendan Rodgers, and if anyone can do it, it would be him, was able to tap into that on a consistent basis, then you have got an absolute game changer on your hand. And he showed that.
Yeah.
I mean, he got I'm giving him the assist for Tony Ralston. We'll come to Tony Ralston. The last 15 minutes
I knew you would.
is dedicated to Tony Ralston. But before we do that, Chris, I hope you don't mind, but you've been tinkering with the old AI generators. I'm bringing this up. Because I want you to tell us the significance of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tell us on the left-hand side if you think that looks like Chris. I mean, you've got volume, but that guy takes it to Jota/George Michael levels.
Not when I feel it's the slightest. It's not when I feel it's the slightest. One thing I like about that is a nice brown colour, which my hair no longer is. No, it's so this was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but basically it's my dad's 70th birthday today. I've been having a little bit of fun. I've been doing some using some old pictures and some new pictures, and we've had the little fella and sitting with his papa and stuff like that with the dog, and it's been quite good. So yeah, having a little bit of fun with the iGeneration. But this one was largely just to indicate. I mean, it's taken from an old 80s kind of Lethal Weapon style poster, as you can probably tell. And my dad's now started as a result of me being on Acsom, he started referring to himself as Triple D, which is Double Denham's dad. Right? That's not a word of a joke. He'll not thank me for saying that. But yeah, this was just a wee tongue-in-cheek thing. And I sent this to him this morning just to say he's always had my back. So and he really has. He's everybody. I know everybody will talk up their own father, but he's the reason that if there's anything good about me, it's came from him and my mother as well, of course. So yeah, happy birthday, Dad.
It looks like Ryan Reynolds, Chris. You look a bit like Ryan Reynolds there.
I'll take that, Kev. I'll take
guy,
that.
And your dad looked a bit like who was the dad out of Frasier? Who was yeah? I can't remember the guy, the character's name, but that's the two that looks to me.
Doing all right for 70 by that image anyway. Well done, by the way. Absolutely loved that when I seen it. You also done one of these, and I think that has been very kind to some of the contributors on a Celtic State of Mind. And Quinny is so good that he appears twice on it. So well done.
I think one's supposed to be Kevin McCluskey, but it just couldn't distinguish between the two beards. So.
Brilliant. I think the best out of that, I've got to say, the best one out of that, right, is Lawrence. I think that is brilliant. Look at Lawrence in the middle. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks for doing that, Chris. I love all that nonsense. Right, brilliant. But happy birthday to Triple D from everybody on the Acsom crew. Rio Hatate, it's one of the ones. Let us know in the comment section. Do you think we could get another vintage campaign out of him, or do you think the time has come for him to move on? Because when he gives you that kind of technique at the weekend, and as you say, Chris, let's not take anything away from the fast feet with regards to his second goal as well. Absolutely right. And this is his most prolific campaign as a senior footballer as well. So yeah, he is doing pretty well, and there's been something of a turnaround because I don't think Brendan fancied him actually when he first came in. Let us know in the comments what you think. There's loads more to talk about. We will be dedicating a wee bit of time on Tony Ralston, all the other goal scorers as well. A great Monday, says Paul Doc 1978. Good year that, by the way, 78. Just pointing and laughing at the other half all day. There you go. Why not? They got a wee bit excited yesterday after getting a draw at Pittodrie, and I believe that if we get a win at Pittodrie, Kev, that could be the whole thing wrapped up. The fixtures are out. The post-split fixtures, they were released this morning, I believe. Have you seen them?
I don't think they have been officially released. I think there's
Is there a leak?
I think there's still arguments going on behind the scenes. The ones that were leaked have got us going to Pittodrie first, but for what everybody's been hearing, Sky want us to go to Tannadice for more Celtic fans to be there. So there's a bit of an argument. So this is not a computer. This is not a random computer. Who would have thought that?
See, the other thing,
The
other thing as well. I mean, the whole purpose of the split, guys, right, is to make to add a bit of jeopardy to more fixtures near the end of the season, to draw in more of a crowd and get more of a buzz around certain games, but also to make them more exciting for the broadcaster. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it, right? Am I reading that right? So why would you then not be able to handle a Celtic versus Rangers game where Celtic could tie up the league? It's the blockbuster. It's the biggest selling game. It basically turns the game between Celtic and Rangers that will be played post-split into one of the end of season ones. You know, where Kobayashi plays centre half or Rudy Vata scores at hand. One of the games that the league's already won. You've got something right in your palm of your hands and you don't grasp it, Chris. And I think the big one there was this vow after I think it was probably called the shame game back when Rangers won the league, remember?
Yes.
And they parodied the huddle and all that nonsense. And Hugh Dallas was hit with a coin and someone fell from the top tier and all that stuff. And they said it would never happen again. But why? I mean, have we not moved on for that kind of thing? Can we not make best use of the best fixture we've got in Scottish football?
Yeah. There's still this element of treating supporters like, infants in a primary school that, if you don't line them all up and make them put their finger on their mouth and keep quiet, that they'll somehow behave unruly. Look, there's always going to be people who go over the top at football matches, irrespective of the fixture or what team they support, or it's just something you've got to accept. What you do is you put some controls in to try and prevent that. If you need extra stewards, put them in. If you need an extra police presence, you put them in. But don't prosecute before the crimes have been committed, right? Give supporters a little bit of personal accountability, give them the benefit of the doubt and say, look, there will be repercussions if you guys step out of line, but we're trusting you to go and show that you can actually celebrate and you can actually conduct yourselves accordingly. Because no other sport, as we've said many times, in no other sport do the fans get treated with such disdain and contempt, really, in my opinion. You don't see it in rugby. You've got fans mixing, you've got people trusted to drink responsibly in there. Most people have a good time. I've got relatives who are big rugby fans, are there every time it's on, and there's never any trouble. Even though the rivalries are pretty fierce, but there's never there. But for some reason, we can't shake or get past this perception. And I think actually because we don't trust fans and trust supporters or the authorities, I say, don't trust fans and supporters to go and conduct themselves, we're actually holding our ability to get away from that perception back. It's almost a little bit like self-harming, because we're saying, well, we don't think we can trust supporters to go and conduct themselves in a match, and there might be trouble, and it might be this, and it might be that. Well, how do you know there'll be trouble if you never ever give us the opportunity to prove there won't be? So they feed the perception that football fans, and particularly those that follow Celtic and Rangers, can never behave.
The big thing as well, any industry on the planet, Kev, would look at the potential of a title decider, and Jungle Lions come in and said that, and say that is the blockbuster game, that is the post-split game, we must cover that game live. Yeah, it'll never happen, will it, Kev? It won't happen. It'll be us going away from home, winning maybe at a Tannadice or Pittodrie, and that'll be it. It'll be wrapped up. And again, it comes back, and I'm going to bring up the VAR. We absolutely pulverised Kilmarnock at the weekend. Best performance in a while, particularly the first half. But I'm going to bring up the offside as well, because I think it's another thing that's pulling the Scottish game back, Kev. It's just tin pot in many, many respects. But this is an open goal for us as a nation. Yet we'll not take advantage of it, will we, Kev? Ever?
No, we won't take advantage of it, because it's been a well-known open secret for a wee while that the last game at Ibrox was penciled in for the weekend, May the 10th. I think it's probably been penciled in then since the start of the season. That's the weekend that's going to happen, So it's never going to, but as you say, if, say, for example, down in England, Liverpool were to play Arsenal next week to win the title, Sky would guarantee, that's going on the telly. That is going to be on the telly. That's going to be a big winner. That will not happen up here, and just because of the way that football fans are sometimes quite rightly viewed, and that pains me to actually say that. It does actually pain me to actually say that. I think the problem that you have got is the TV deal that is the TV deal that Scotland have got. That there's part of me, there is really part of me that would find it quite amusing if we do go to Tannadice or Pittodrie and we're forced to go away first, because we are being forced to go away first because Sky can't show another game for Celtic Park until the last game of the season, until the trophy day, because that doesn't count in their number that they can actually show for Celtic Park. They've got, I think they've already showed 5 for Celtic Park this season. No idea why they showed us playing Kilmarnock earlier on in the season. No idea. Somebody will need to explain that one to me. And they went early this weekend thinking that was going to be the title party. But part of me, really part of me goes, I say we go to Pittodrie or Tannadice and we lose that game and we've got a 3 o'clock on a Saturday against St Mirren at home as the second game to win it, and Sky are not there. I think that would be quite funny. It would be funny. But it's all to do with our dreadful telly deal, dreadful folk that run Scottish football. They've got no idea how to actually run Scottish football whatsoever.
No.
And they want the 4 derbies. No, well, talk to any fans. Nobody wants the 4 derbies. They want it down to 2. They want a bigger league, but we didn't get listened to. And you look at it, there'll be stuff going on in the background today that we haven't got a clue about. But already we're hearing, by the way, we're going to Aberdeen first, and already now we're hearing North Sky are going. They didn't want us to go to Aberdeen first. They want it to be more a spectacle, so they want us to go to Tannadice where there's more Celtic fans. So it's already a complete and utter mess, ain't it?
Yeah, the random computer-generated fixture list will be an interesting one to see, Kev. Obviously, my sources are that good. I just thought that was confirmed already. So there you go. And the thing with regards to the 4 derbies and constantly going on about 4 derbies, on the one hand, you constantly want the 4 derbies for the deal. On the other hand, you get a meaningful derby and you don't use it. It becomes one of the end-of-season derbies where, as I said in the past, the actual score, other than the bragging rights against your rivals, the score itself makes no difference to the league table.
And didn't get me wrong, our club wants 4 derbies. They want a 10-team league as well because they reckon it's more competitive. It's our club that's pushing for the 10-team league.
Why would they believe that? Why would they believe it's more competitive to have 10 teams in the league?
If you have a look at the most competitive league in Scotland, it's the Championship. It's a 10-team league. So all the ones underneath us are all 10 teams. And what our clubs seem to believe that a 10-team is a more competitive league. You've got 5 European places up for grabs, and what they want is 2 relegated. 2 up, 2 down, no playoff. That's what they actually want. So what they believe, you would then have teams, apart from the 3 in the middle, you would have top 5 had something to play for, which is European qualification, and you would have the bottom 5 playing against relegation. Because you've got the 2 relegation places, it brings in more jeopardy, and that they reckon it'd be a more competitive league.
I find that interesting as well, Kev, if that is the case, because obviously Brendan said he didn't want that. He wanted to extend it, so there might be a little bit of
commercial for the commercial reasons. That's why the club want it.
Aye, but I think they've got to look at things a wee bit deeper as well. They've also got to look at developing players. And how can you develop players when it is basically snuffed out in a 10-team league because there is no breathing space to actually introduce young players and give them some game time. So I do think that it would be a big no-no for me. I'm going to bring up the VAR, I will, but there's better performances that I want to speak about as well, rather than touch on the slight negative that I took from the game. David Boyle, while Ida did not do anything spectacular, I totally get what David's saying here, by the way. I just feel the balance in play was better with him in the team. I also felt the balance was better at the back, Chris. I did feel that Scales had coming back, and it was a change that I had suggested last week, actually. I was happy to see Scales in the team. I think Scales and Taylor behind Hatate helped Rio. I do. And I was, again, watched it, and I noticed it more this morning watching the game back. Liam Scales is very, very good at carrying the ball. Progressing with that ball, just galloping the big Chris Ayer gallop up the park and making 20 and 30 yards. and then he's putting everybody on the back foot, and then he's making the pass. Not always the right pass, I've got to say. There was a couple of stray balls, but I felt that Scalesy slotted in, for me, in a more balanced fashion than what Trusty has recently. And I think that his return to the team breathed a wee bit of life into Rio. He was involved in a couple of goals, not always getting the assist, but he was involved in the build-up play as well. The big question here, though, Chris, looking at St Johnstone, looking at the semi-final, and the fact that they beat us the other week, and I agree with Kev, we need to get one back at St Johnstone at the weekend. I want to go through the 4 guys that were reintroduced into the team. I'm going to start with Scalesy. Does he stay in the side? Does he stay in the start 11 against St Johnstone? Because if you're basing it on that balance that David spoke about there in the comments that Ida gave us up front, I believe we had the same balance at the back. I'm keeping Scales in the starting 11. What's your take?
Yeah, well, first of all, before I say anything, I'll just send congratulations to Austin Trusty and his partner for the birth of their daughter.
Did they watch Acsom? The both of them, do they?
I'm convinced the entire squad watches Acsom, to be honest. But yeah, just congratulations to them. So just want to say something nice before I say no. I think Scales should retain his place in the team. So so congratulations, Austin. But I think, you've got to win your position back from Liam Scales. Look, Liam Scales, every time he's called upon, for me, comes in, gives it his all, doesn't play, any worse than any other player that comes in. Yeah, okay, he's just coming out of the cold again. Distribution was maybe a wee bit flaky at times, but I agree with you. In the first half in particular, it was evident he was carrying the ball forward. He even had the shot, as I said before, Carter Vickers, which is something, give my old man a shout out. He's been saying, why do the centre-backs not have a shot? They always get into the position. Carter Vickers as well. They find themselves in that position, and you sort of wonder, why not just pull the trigger? And of course, both of them did in that match. One ended up in a pretty decent save, and the other one was an absolute screamer into the net. So I thought it was one of the reasons why we were so effective in our play in the first half, is that we were bringing the ball out for the back, and the centre-backs were bringing it forward and making forward passes. In the second half, when the intensity level has dropped off, we reverted back to that kind of horseshoe. They'd carry the ball forward, and then the pass would go to the side, and it would go to the side. And that, I think, meant that we weren't being quite as direct in terms of our forward play. So I think Scales, for me, brought a lot more balance, brought a degree of experience in as well. And I think you're right, on that left-hand side, in combination with Taylor, was that one of the reasons why you saw players like Rio Hatate become so effective? He wasn't having to do quite as much defensive work, because I think Scales, and while he spent a fair portion in midfield, Greg Taylor actually did a lot of that work for him. So yeah, I thought that was evident in the match. I think probably the first 60 minutes in particular. I thought that was one of the more effective areas that we played. So I would keep Scales, absolutely.
Yeah, he stays in for me as well. Kevin Graham, there's a lot of people supporting that motion in the comment section. Claire Menery does not agree with the change. She would prefer to retain the 4 derby games instead of games versus the likes of Partick Thistle, etc., which is a derby game as well. Yeah. But yeah, there's going to be fans who are quite happy the way it is, to be fair, and that's absolutely fine. Kev, Scalesy, where are you on the Scalesy debate? Trusty, big money was spent on Austin Trusty, and as we know, since Scales broke back into the team, or since Rodgers took over anyway, we have signed a number of centre-halves who haven't made that position their own. A lot of people leading into the game are talking about Nawrocki, didn't do anything wrong, but it's all about balance for me. Nawrocki's far more natural on the right-hand side, and he's not going to get a game ahead of CCV. So I think Scales is your man, and I'd be quite happy, unless there's a disaster between now and the end of the season, for him to have the jersey.
I think Rodgers maybe made a statement on Saturday with Scales coming back in after a period out being injured. Now, last season, I think we got to a point when we were going through a wee sort of that wee dodgy spell that seemed to last for about 6 months for the majority of the season, until the last 6 games, that he could trust Scales, and he knew his limits. He knew what he would give him. He knew what he couldn't give him, but he kept on playing him because he could trust him. He could trust him to be fit. for then. But then Trusty comes in. Trusty comes in, and Rodgers has already admitted, and for certain games, especially games against Aberdeen, now bringing Trusty because he's speed, he's quicker. But I think he made a wee bit of a point on Saturday, bringing back in Scales just to say, I know what this guy's going to give me. No, he still had his wee moments. He put 2 at the park in the first half. I remember when they were easy, but you're going to get that with Liam Scales. You are going to get that with Liam Scales. I would also go back to, I had a laugh last week with Big John Hughes going on about why you getting married during the close season. They've just had a Wayne John. There was a shotgun and a feather involved more than likely. That's why they got married during the season. So, aye, maybe Trusty had other things on his mind. He's a human being. Like his wife's about to give birth and that and stuff like that. But I think Rodgers has made a point to be bringing Scales back in. But then again, Hampden's a big pitch, and there's, I can see Trusty getting back in before the end of the season, but I think, I don't really know. I mean, I didn't expect Rodgers to make that many changes at the weekend. I really didn't. But if you have a look at last season, he trusted Scales for the running. So he might actually do that again. But again, I can't read Brendan. He struggle to read what he's actually going to do. And Johnny, but again, you look at last season, Scales was there, like it was a virtually ever present. So you would think he's maybe going like that way. Austin Trusty, I'm going to take you at the firing line here to show what it needs to get across the line.
I found it interesting, Kev, the press conference, make sure I say it right, last week that Brendan Rodgers gave it, and he was talking about things like, having the mentality to be able to be that winner and take things and get them over the line. And we did do it last season. We did it with regards to James Forrest, who again came in at the weekend. We did it at the weekend with Greg Taylor and Liam Scales. They were 3 changes that I kind of expected for no other reason than it's exactly what I think we needed at that time to freshen things up. But I was a wee bit, talking about not being able to judge him at times, I was a wee bit surprised that Jota dropping out. And that was the fourth, because I thought he might have made a change in the midfield, Kev, but you're right. He's obviously said, look, the midfield wasn't the issue. It was what was going on.
The changes made the statement. The changes made the statement where us were all going, I would replace somebody in the midfield. He went, no, the midfield wasn't the problem, by the way.
Yeah.
There was other areas that I believed that there were problems. And as you say, Jota's was the surprising one. Really was the surprising one.
Yeah.
And again, the changes that were made when they came back on, did they really do anything? No, really.
No, because what I think it does do when you make, let's say the 4 changes he makes, he's thinking, right, they guys have got the jerseys until such times as they run out of steam or, are suspended or injured. What you then have, Chris, is you've got that bench, and you should have 4 very disappointed players on that bench itching for an opportunity to get back in the team. And then it really does, the dynamic completely changes between now and the end of the season as a result of that. I mean, Kuhn, for months we were talking about Kuhn being Scotland's Player of the Year. Jota, the prodigal son, he returns in January, and we've been nothing but positive about his return. And still a wee bit surprised, actually, when he dropped out. You look at Trusty, just the fact that we were willing to shell out £6 million, the same price for CCV, to bring Trusty to the football club. And Schlupp, as I say, in his early days, I was really, really impressed with what he brought, but he's completely gone off the boil. So you bring these tried and tested guys in. Taylor's got something to play for. Taylor absolutely has something to play for, Chris. And I looked at the weekend. Yeah, brilliant, beautiful, sentimental moment for him and his family coming on the park with his baby and everything, right? That's great. And he carries the baby as well as Scales. He carries the ball. That's what I've wrote when I watched it this morning. But his performance backed that up. And I was watching him. And I got stick last week for saying when he came on in the second half for Schlupp, when we were beaten for St Johnstone, I thought Taylor made an impact. People were saying he did nothing, but he made a really telling impact at the weekend as well. And it re-emerges, this discussion, this debate re-emerges, Chris. Does he have a future? Because for me right now, Taylor's ahead of Schlupp. in the pecking order. That's the way that I'm viewing it right now, okay? And unless his performances dip, that's the way it's going to stay until the end of the season. But what does it say about Taylor's future? Now, we already know the rubbish that had been discussed in the Scottish media in the last week isn't going to happen. But he's not signed a deal. And from what we hear, he wants to stay at Celtic.
Yep. Yeah, and the manager has spoken about his desire to keep the player. You know, he likes him, he likes the way he fits into his system. You know, he spoke very complimentary. You don't have to do that about a player that's planning to leave and that isn't going to play a part for the rest of the season. So, for me, everything fits. And it makes me wonder, what is it that's preventing the deal getting across the line? Now, look, some people won't view Taylor as being worthy of being in that top tier of you know, the highest paid Celtic players. I can understand that to a degree. He plays in maybe an unglamorous position to an extent. He's, you know, he's been subject to criticism, maybe more so than some other players. Quite a bit of it justified when it comes to maybe big moments from a defensive standpoint that he's cost us. But I think he brings something to the team that not a lot of other players do, in the sense that he's, and funnily enough, Chris Sutton mentioned that when he was on commentary as well, he's got a bit of game intelligence, particularly when he's going forward and he's actually supporting the attacking play. Now, I always support the kind of wee guys union. You know, me and Greg Taylor are probably roughly about the same height. Neither of us are ever going to be the big guy to win a header, you know, or from a long high ball coming in. It's just not our strength. We can't do anything about it.
So how small is your dad then?
This is the only reason why I'm growing the hair, by the way. Give me a few inches more height. But yeah, my dad's actually, believe it or not, I'm the tallest. I'm one of the tallest ones in my family. Believe it or not, it tells you about we're descended from hobbits. But you know, he's never going to be that big physical presence that you need at the back. And when Schlupp comes in, for example, you look at his stature and you think he's, you know, he can cover that element, right? But there's so much more that Taylor brings. I mean, some of his passing, his ability on the ball. I would love to actually see him play maybe that holding midfield role, where it doesn't necessarily need the physical stature, but what he needs is a pace and the ability to kind of mark and press and harass and harry and that kind of thing, and help transition the defence to the attack. I would like to see him play there. But the argument I made, and I made it on the Acsom group chat, was, can you replace all the positive elements that Taylor brings, right? What would it cost to replace that in terms of bringing in a brand new, untried and untested player that will give you what you know you will get with Greg Taylor? Right? Now, yeah, that doesn't take away the defensive frailties, but what will it cost to replace what he does bring and has brought to the team and the level of success he's brought to the team? When I look at that and I weigh up that argument, I would say, if it's, you know, speculative, if it's 25 grand a week he wants, relative to what the other players in the team are getting paid, I would say pay it, and I would say keep him.
Well, you make a good argument, and there's lots of good points coming through. Billy, come on, Billy Mac. Taylor, what's it all about bringing his bait? Why? Listen, why not? Why not? It was nice, don't you think?
This is like Big Yogi talking about you can't get married during the season.
Come on. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. No, but what you're saying there is true, and someone brings it up here. Bob J. I can think of a few left backs that he's seen off, but I'm not sure if it's as many as 5. He's seen off a few left backs, Bob J. And you're right. You bring these guys in, some of them on massive wages. I mean, like Salt would have been on big wage when he came to Celtic, right? He wasn't the answer. You know, you bring in players like Bernabe. He wasn't the answer. Bolingoli wasn't the answer. And then Schlupp came in, looked good. Is he the answer? Don't think so, right? So I've always been of the view, and I don't think this is a backward step, because I'm actually not saying Greg Taylor's your first choice for 50. That was our 50th game of the season. How much games is Tierney going to play? Maybe 30 plus. So you're looking for a player who's maybe going to play 25 to 30 games in a campaign. So for all intents and purposes, they're the backup left back. So you've bought somebody in who's better. You've improved the squad, but what a backup to have. And you're right, there's no guarantee, Bob, that who you bring in is going to do the job. I mean, Schlupp is the most recent example at the moment. Del Boy, you agree with Chris, just pay Taylor the money, 25 grand. You could pay more for a lesser player.
That's
and
good.
JD does, he does the sums. He does the sums on what you would pay if you bring somebody in even for 15 grand over 4 years. So it could be quite costly. Is it recency bias, Kev? Are we forgetting all the elements of his game that made us want a new left back in January? Where do you sit on this, Kev Graham?
You can sit in both camps. You can actually sit in both camps. I don't think there's a clear answer with this. I really don't. The answers, the comments here and what Chris says is perfectly true, and that's what Rodgers will be sitting doing with the money men. Will be saying the exact same. Go, we're paying 30 grand a week for Sloop. No better than him. So, and the money men will be going like that. Aye, but we're now bringing in KT, who is going to be one of the highest paid players at the club. You want X, and X. You want to bring back Christopher Ayer, and he's going to be one of the highest paid players at the club.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing, by the way, Kev? Sorry to interrupt you. Chris
I'm
Ayer,
hearing it's a thing, aye.
I'll tell you, if you saw the tackle I made at the weekend there, Kev, I'd take him back in a second.
So you want to bring this guy back, and he's going to be one of the highest paid players at the club. You want to spend X amount on a defensive midfielder. Well, see your 1, 2, 3 choices, your defensive midfielders. If we give Greg Taylor that contract, you're now down to choice 2 of that defensive midfielder, because we can't now play choice 1. And that's it. That's the arguments that are going to be have like behind the scenes. But Rodgers is probably winning the argument just now because of the performances of the replacements.
Yeah,
and he's probably going like that. He is more important to the squad. But on the other hand, anybody can have the other, you call it recency bias, everybody can have the same doubts about the flaws in his game. But Rodgers will be saying to the board, no, I know what I'm getting there. We know what we're getting there. There's no saying that we can bring in somebody for 10, 11 grand a week. It's going to sit behind Kieran Tierney. It's going to do the same job as what Greg Taylor can do in and around the changing room and also in that team. So that will be the argument. That will be the argument that's going on at the moment. It's interesting. I mean, I kind of got my knitting pooed on Friday about. I believe
who was pulling Kev's knitting on Friday.
That I believe that there must be some basis in the Rangers stuff.
Oh yeah.
Maybe my feeling was he doesn't want to leave Scotland, and maybe that's what my feeling is. Mm-hmm. That and you saying that he wants the deal to get done, and Rodgers saying he wants the deal to get done. There could be an agreement coming there. But maybe my feeling was he doesn't want to leave Scotland, and that's why I believe that that was floated out there, and there was a reason that was floated out there. Maybe it was floated out there for his agent to get back round the table with Celtic. Who knows what goes on with these dark arts?
I understand why he wouldn't want to leave Scotland. Obviously, we're talking about somebody had a dig there about his baby on the pitch and everything. That's one of the reasons he wouldn't want to leave Scotland. And people have then added 2 and 2 together and got 5 because you don't leave Celtic to go anywhere in Scotland. And maybe the only team that could cobble together a deal would be Rangers. But that whole notion for me was ridiculous last week, and it's even more ridiculous now. Thinking not your notion, Kev. I had a dig at Chris Boyd and Michael Stewart for saying it, mm-hmm. And I look at Greg Taylor now, and I'm thinking, well, we were promised, or we kind of thought Sloop's going to come in and give us the that athleticism, the combative nature, the physicality, which is becoming a buzzword now in European football, and there has been games where he's shown it. There has been. I mean, I thought he was very good away at Bayern Munich, for example. But then the vast majority of the games that we play are games like that match at the weekend against Kilmarnock. That's the vast majority of the games we play. And you know what Taylor can do in those games. And that's the bread and butter, isn't it? I mean, first 5 minutes of the game, they wrote it down deliberately, knowing that he went on to have a good game. He's thrown his arms up, which is one of the things that has always annoyed me about Taylor. But it just shows you that he's in the team and he's 100% committed, and he's getting frustrated at not getting the ball when he was screaming for it. He's still that same Taylor.
this is why I can see both camps. This is why you can have the foot in both camps and go, I can get what everybody's saying about this, but you can also get why the manager wants to keep him. But you also get why folk go, I wouldn't be bored if he moves. I understand that, I really do. And it's quite a difficult position to actually be in. I like Taylor. I really do like Taylor, but I know there's a reason that he's playing for us. And I think a lot of folk as well have got to actually remember it's Scottish football. It's Scottish football. The players that play in Scottish football have got faults. And yes, we want to go up a level, but then we've got to say, well, KT's that level going up. But by the way, we've still to play Motherwell and St Johnstone, well, maybe no St Johnstone, Motherwell, Falkirk, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to rest KT. So could we get somebody better than Taylor to do that domestically? Well, that's the argument Rodgers is going to have as well. That's the risk. We thought Big Sloop would come up here and walk it. Just came up here and proved I didn't really fancy this, by the way. I didn't fancy. So I can understand where everybody's get to, but in this one, you've got to trust the manager.
Yeah.
I think you have got to trust the manager in this one. But the argument that he'll be having behind the scenes will be exactly what I just says. The money men will go, well, if you give him 25 grand, by the way, your first choice there is just moved into your second choice because we need to watch these wages. And that's the argument that's going to be having.
I would be interested to know how much wages Sloop has been paid by Celtic and how much wages Alex Bailly was being paid by Celtic. I would like to know the balance there and how much they were getting paid, because the second choice, for want of a better term, left back has been either Alex Bailly or Sloop this season. So I'd like to know how much we were prepared to spend on those two guys.
But this is my point, and it will be a point that we'll speak about during the summer. Brendan Rodgers should not be having that argument with non-football men. He should have that budget there, and he should be able to spend it as he sees fit.
Agree.
He should not be having that argument with some behind the scenes.
Yep.
Now that's that bottom line. That argument shouldn't be there. There should be a sporting director that go, right, this is your budget. And he goes, well, I want that amount for Greg Taylor. And they should be moving it around. They should not be having an argument with somebody that knows nothing about football.
Yeah, manager gets judged on results, right? So ultimately, if he wants to invest his budget in a particular player, the board shouldn't be turning around and saying, no, we don't think that's right. If it's not right, he'll get judged on bad results at the end of the season. That's where you say you were wrong. But you don't tell him he's wrong about a decision to sign a player. That's got to be at the manager's discretion. That's why you have a manager. The manager's got to be the one to make that decision.
And a football doctor as well. Talking to ex-players, as we have done today, we've got a few guys coming up for shows. We've got Lubo Moravcik coming up very, very soon. But I've got to say, I'm not even sure what the figure is on the bottom of that ticker tape, but we're down to single figures on the Lubo gig. That's an old flyer. That's when he came to Greenock. But he is coming to Gracie's, and I cannot wait for that. 3rd of May, we've also got Stubbsy. There you go. Asking you will receive. Somebody mentioned Stubbsy. I thought he'd be a great guest. So he's coming to Gracie's as well. Now that is on the night of the Champions League final. What we're going to do is we're going to do the first half before the game. We're going to watch the game with Stubbsy live at Gracie's. And then after it, we'll do the Q&A with the audience. So that's going to turn out to be a great night. And then, of course, there's Paddy's gig. Paddy Lavery. You got there in the end, Paddy. Chris Sutton is pointing at you, Paddy. He's coming for you. And we're coming to Belfast. And can I just say, the tickets are flying for this one. So all the links are underneath the video as well. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us, as you always do. I was quite happy with the rest of the replacement. I think there might be a change up top against St Johnstone, guys. I could see why he brought in Ida. It was for the physical element in the forward line. Do we do the same against St Johnstone? I'll just ask you first, Chris. Do you keep Ida through the centre, or do you put Maeda back through the centre and Jota returning to the left wing?
It's difficult. I really feel for Ida at the moment. And I said it at the weekend. I think the striking position is, bar none, it's the hardest position in our team to play, because you're dependent on a lot of service coming for the wingers in the midfield, and quite often if you're not getting that, you're isolated up there. And we saw it with Kyogo. We've seen it on occasion with Dyson, and we've seen it with Ida. And Ida, I think, out of all the strikers that we've mentioned, is the one that feeds off the confidence of getting goals. And I think when he doesn't score, it does impact his game. But I think there's a player there. I think he's got potential. What I'd like to see is if we get the title over the line, that either gets some minutes under maybe slightly less pressure, and doesn't necessarily have that fear that he's going to lose his place quite as easily. But I think until we get the title over the line, and probably for the game against St Johnstone in the Cup, I would stick with Maeda just now, because he is Mr. Consistent and he's scoring even when he's not in that striking role. So I think he'd a second choice at the moment, but I'm not writing him off like a lot of people are. I think there's enough, I'm seeing enough game to game to say just needs a couple of goals, get the confidence up, get the sharpness up, and I think he'll contribute.
I know Kev will be nipping away pretty sharpish after this, but this is a point of discussion I really, really wanted to make, right? And it's because...
I can hang on for a...
You all right?
The winds are quiet, it's fine.
That's good, it's good. We've got 1,800 live on the stream today. And I think I always say this, it's important to talk about these things when you've won at a canter. It's as important, if not more so. And this is at 4-1, 43 minutes on the clock, right? So I snapped this morning. Now, my biggest issue with this, guys, right, is the fact that, the lines, obviously with the perspective, I get that they're thinner on the north stand than they are in the main stand. I get all that kind of thing, right? But with regards to the dotted lines from the shoulders of Ida and the defender who is playing them on or off, they're manipulated by hand. They are human dotted lines, right? So we had that confirmed over the week, and they look it as well, by the way. They look like all over the place. They're not straight. And if, for example, and I'm going to ask you honestly, if you disagree with me, please say so, and I'm sure you will, Chris and Kev. If the red dotted line was to stop where the blue one was, and the blue dotted line was to stop where the red one was, and it flipped it, would it make it any clearer? Would you have a stronger argument or not? I don't think you would. I don't think this makes it any clearer. And this is the issue that I've got. You know what? Maybe it was a smidgen offside. The problem is I don't know looking at this image. And I've zoomed in, and I can do that, live. I can zoom right into this. And you see the dotted lines? They are hand drawn almost. I think someone's standing there, honestly, sticking pins in a cushion. Chris, what's your thoughts on this? Because again, it comes down to the tin pot nature of spending £1.2 million on a VAR system, right? Where you cannot tell for sure, 100%, if he does actually off. And by the way, can also say that you could probably take this a frame back. This is another thing that annoys me. You can't, because the cameras aren't good enough, right? So that's the best version you're going to get. And as you know, from the motion of the ball, is that Engels' toe? Is that
Engels' toe? That ball's in flight already.
It's in flight.
That ball's already moved.
It's already left his toe.
Yeah, really, really fine margins. But no, my biggest problem with this is if I look at that, I could make a case for both. I could say, well, he's offside, onside. Now, in terms of the way I interpret offside, or the way I think offside should be interpreted, you tell me what material difference having a centimetre of your elbow ahead of another player makes in terms of your ability to score a goal. It makes no difference. So I've got real issues with that for a start. But that image and the way those lines are drawn at the moment, I don't think that's clear enough to make a definitive decision. And I think if you can't make a definitive decision, you have to say if it's as close as that, then I would call it onside. And I know you'd be accused of bias being a Celtic fan in that instance, but I just can't see a clear and obvious case for that being offside. I just can't. No,
Kev, what's your take on it? Because it's one of the most frustrating things that I have in terms of being my bonnet about Scottish football, because it comes down to cost, and we have gone for the absolute base level VAR. And this £1.2 million, that 1.2 was just before it was introduced. That was the figure that was obviously put out in the press release to all the mainstream broadcasters, if you look at them, because that also included Hawkeye. And as we know, for the Jota goal at Fir Park, there isn't a Hawkeye camera at every single stadium doing this, right? We know that. So we've actually probably paid less than 1.2 million quid for the system that we've got. Does that prove to you that the goal was offside? That's my question, Kev, because if it doesn't prove it, the system's no good enough.
The camera angle is funny. I think it's the angle. Look, if having a look at the camera angle here, I would say by the letter of the law, he looks offside. I disagree with it. I completely disagree with that law that he is, that because his elbow's offside, he's offside. But the graphic, the lines are no parallel with the 18-yard box. They're not straight with the 18-yard box.
No, that's a good point, Kev, actually, yeah.
So, and the camera angle is slightly in front of the play. You can't judge by that. You cannot judge by that. But with my eyes, I'm going, well, with the letter of the law, he looks offside. I completely disagree with the law, but the camera's completely skewing this perspective. And you look at you look. I see, like they can't say that. They can't say that's a clear and obvious error there. Eh?
No,
they cannot say. Again, it's went with the eye test. No, and why does the blue line start?
It goes through the kids. It goes through the players' arm.
Blue line. Yeah. Why does the red line start then the blue line? No, it's a camera angle. The camera angle completely skews it, and you can't tell if he's offside or not. So they can't tell if he's offside, but I went my test and I'm going, he looks offside by the skewed camera angle.
So the linesman's decision has to be final then, if you can't prove categorically that a mistake was made.
But as I say, from the camera angle that they've got, he looks offside, but I completely disagree with that law.
My issue here, Kev, like I was saying before, if I was to take that dotted blue line from the Kilmarnock player and just extend it down to where the red one is and just change colour and then do the same with either, it's like, right, it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, then you would have the flip side of the argument, and then you would be having the same argument for and against. I just don't think it gives you the same, the semi-automated VAR for offside, and you see it in the Champions League. You see it in the English game as well, where they have got so many cameras around the stadium that they can flip it and you can go right round we could zoom into Adam Eden, we could turn it and we could see which part of his body was against, over the line, if you like. That there tells you if you're a toenail offside. This here is guesswork, and if you've got to guess, that means you don't know for sure. Well, therefore, you stick with the referee's decision, don't you?
If you're guessing, what's the difference between the referee making the decision and two guys guessing in a room? I mean, it's still guesswork, right? So it doesn't provide any more validity or credibility. Look at these dots.
That's like, right, Chris, you have the red Sharpie and I have the blue one, right? And let's just try and figure this. It's terrible, eh?
Yeah, I mean, what are we basing this on? Which one of the guys in the room's got slightly better?
How do they know
vision eyesight? It's just
right. So say you're on the blue Sharpie, Chris. When do you know that that's touching the turf? When do you know that that's touching the grass? It's just a massive green. You know what I mean? It's just honestly, it's up for guessing and debate, and that was the wording that Brendan used the other week. Now, what I would say, and this is a conversation that we had on the WhatsApp group, I do think it's improved. Bringing it in has improved the process. It really has improved it, right? But what it's done is it's given us an insight into what it could be like if you just had a better version of VAR. And I'm always for improving the game, and I'm looking at that there, and I'm thinking, right, okay, actually, in the great scheme of things, it's not going to make any difference to our season, right? We might have scored that fifth goal and scored another 4 in the second half. Who knows what happens after that because of momentum and energy and everything else. It's not going to change a thing this time round. But we could be having this argument in a game that affects a treble. We could be having the same argument. And that's the frustration, because when Muir was sacked last week, Kev, we brought up, I think there was half a dozen really bad decisions he'd made against Celtic that when you look at them were completely wrong. And it can happen in a pivotal moment of the season where it can really make a difference, in terms of success.
I says that last week, and what I went on about last week as well was the St Johnstone game. Was the referee? The referee was absolutely dreadful, but it's like the 28 seconds to take a by kick. It's the getting in the way in the ball. It's giving the non-existent free kicks that break up the flow of the game. It's the guy being doing injured for 4 minutes. 8 subs and you only get 4 minutes injury time at the end of the game. It's stuff like that. And you even saw Beaton on Saturday refereed that second half completely different from he refereed the first half. How many non-existent free kicks did he actually give to break up the game? He actually stopped any sort of flow getting whatsoever. There was a time in the second half he actually gave, the ball went out for a corner and he gave Celtic went to take the quick corner and he gave a by kick. He pointed at a by kick and we stopped. Then he went, oh no, it's a corner, to stop us taking the quick corner kick. and he done it deliberately, and you could actually tell that he had done it deliberately, and that's what really annoys me. It's the wee small margins that they do during the games. We can pick up the big moments in that as well, but there's wee small things. You notice games start getting refereed differently, and it's all to break up the flow of the game, and Beaton done that perfectly on a Saturday in that second half. At one point, I counted 37 seconds it took for the goalie to take a by kick, 22 seconds to take a throw-in.
I'm loving the fact that Kev's going with that wee stopwatch round his neck, you know, like the Johnny when he took your football team. I love the vision of that, Kev. And
I nearly went mental when he gave the by kick. We went to take the quick corner kick. Kilmarnock were all over the shop, and he went, no, that's a by kick. Then changed his mind.
Aye, it's all these wee things, and it disrupts your rhythm, Kev. It disrupts the rhythm.
Aye, and that's what they do, and that's what they do. And everybody says, "Oh, they can't influence." Aye, they can influence doing stuff like that. You watch the way whoever the referee was refereed that game last week. As soon as St Johnstone go 1-0 up, he done everything to make sure we didn't get into any rhythm in that game. We were rotten, right enough. We were rotten. But
yeah, but it doesn't help, Kev. It doesn't help. When we're right at it, and it could be, you know, that could be a season-defining moment. The one that we just brought up, we know it wasn't. That's when it concerns me. So, listen, big move to get Muir off the job basically last week. That's a positive for me. We now need to look at some way, and this is a different discussion, some way to get a better VAR system and implementing that. And the financials have to be in place. We could find a sponsor. That's something Lawrence was saying to me. Find a sponsor. Every time VAR comes up, there's a sponsor. Right. Thanks everybody for getting involved. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've overrun by a wee bit. Another big shout out to the Triple D. Happy birthday, 70. Absolutely tremendous. You're looking great, but you must be about 4'8" if you're smaller than Chris. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thanks to Chris and Kev for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.